is that if you're looking for get rich quick, you're in the wrong place. And that's pretty much applies to anything. So unless you want an immediate potential reward, then you got to spend a lot of money on bottom of funnel leads and just deal with it, right? That's the reality. This is a longer game.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to our business video school LabCoatAgents webinar. We're bringing you some really cool content this time around. It's been a couple months, I think, since we were able to do a webinar in here, and I'm excited to share this. This is we're going to be talking about the season of giving and using it to promote your business. It's a very useful topic. It's something that I think can be a little bit controversial. It can be done the right way. It can be done certainly the wrong way. We're going to be showing you what we strongly consider to be the right way today. So it should be a lot of fun. So if you're here live with us on Zoom, it's always fun to see where everybody's coming from. If you want to hop over into the chat and let us know what part of the US you're coming from, or every now and then we've got some folks from outside the United States as well, and we'd love to hear that. So pop over into the chat and let us know. And then I'm going to just double check. Looks like we are good to go. So I'm going to get started. I think Jeff might be joining us here in a few minutes, but I figure we can go ahead and just get things rolling, and he'll pop on when he can. Looks like Oxford, Mississippi, Festus, Missouri. All right, cool. Oakville. All right, so we got some Missouri folks on here, some St. Louis area. Hey, Kendrick, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. San Francisco. So we always at least one person from California. There's another one, Ventura. All right, good. We got our California representatives in the house. So cool. And Jeff, I see you just joined me as well. So I appreciate you being here. So all right, let's get rolling. First thing I want to talk about today, before we get into the actual sort of how-to, because we're going to be giving you a strategy, some tips on scripting, tips on video, some really good stuff. I want us to take just a second to talk about this concept, all right? So before we get into what can be a little bit of a tricky type of marketing, which is using the season of giving, giving back to your community and to the organizations in your community as a marketing tactic, right? That's a little bit complex. And as I mentioned earlier, can be done right and can also, in a lot of cases, be done wrong. We want to make sure we do it right. Well, before we get into that, I want to talk about this, because this, I think, sort of, if you understand this concept, you're going to nail your marketing every single time, right? And that concept is this idea, which is the idea that your face is your logo, right? So let me explain what that means a little bit. So in business, throughout, sort of the history of business, for a long time, the idea of a logo or sort of any brand whatsoever never existed, right? You go back a couple hundred years ago, and people were just business people, right? And you would do business with that person, and then maybe their business had a name. A lot of times it was just, Nick Niehouse's shoe shop, that kind of stuff, right? And over time, as marketing and branding started to evolve, we created logos, and we created branding, and we created messaging, and all these other factors that essentially were always meant to sort of create the idea that the business had a little bit of its own personality, right? That the company was this entity that you could get to know and you could develop a relationship with, right? So all these companies have mascots, and they do all this marketing to try to make themselves feel like more than just some faceless corporation, right? And so the reason I'm bringing this up, and the reason I want to talk about this first, and I'd love to get Jeff's take on some of this, is that at this point, human communication has gotten so efficient. It is so easy for us to talk to other people at any given time that I actually think we've come full circle, and we've come all the way back around to a place where people don't really care about the brands and the logos anymore, right? Because they can and often are able to get to know the people in that business, right? They can get to know the owner, they can get to know the employees, they can connect with those people on social media, they can interact with them through email and text and, video messages and all this fun stuff now. And so what that means is that people are making their decisions about who to work with less about what your business does, and even to some degree less about things like reviews, and they're making those decisions more and more based on their relationship with you, all right? Now, it's called a parasocial relationship, a one-sided relationship where one person gets to know you and your business, but you maybe don't know them at all, right? That's called a parasocial relationship because one-sided. And because of communication tools like video, this can become a very strong relationship. And so before we get into talking about the topic today, I just wanted to drive this home, because I think what you have to understand is a lot of us are being too promotional in our content. All right. Now, there's another way to think about content, and that is content is just your communication with your audience, right? It's a form of talking to other people. And I think that we are often too tempted to remind people constantly who we are and what we do, rather than demonstrating what makes us likable, right? Instead of putting out content that's just about the things we're passionate about and our interests and some of the pain points we've experienced throughout life, and letting people get to know us through that content, a lot of the agents that we talk to and work with still keep interjecting that content, even if they're making it with promotional stuff, right? They're talking about how you can hire them. They're getting out on social media, and they're always every single time talking about real estate. And what you have to remember is that there's either, when people see your stuff, when they start to watch your videos on social or through email or whatever it is, they're either going to A, already know who you are and what you do, or B, they're not going to know what you do, right? It's one or the other. They know who you are and they know what you do, or maybe they don't know what you do. If I have no idea what you do, I probably don't know you much at all. I don't necessarily want the first thing I see from you to be a promotional video, right? It's not gonna bode very well for our future relationships. Probably gonna be better if it's something that's community oriented or that gives back or that educates in some form, right? And if I do know you and what you do, I don't have to be reminded of what you do all the time. I just want to be reminded of how much I like you, right? And that's not even conscious. We're not thinking that we want to see that, but that's how we emotionally experience things, right? That's all that matters. And so this is kind of all I wanted to get through with this, and we'll get into our education for the day. But keep that in mind when it comes to making your content, is that what you're ultimately doing with your audience is you're giving them a chance to get to know you as a person, not just as a business anymore. It is too easy to communicate. It's too easy to stay top of mind. And so, Jeff, I know you're muted and your camera's off, so I don't know if you're available. Okay, you're unmuted now, so I think you can chime in here, because I know this is your bread and butter. So if you want to expand for just a couple minutes on this, I mean, you've built your whole business around this concept of basically never talking about what you do. So give us your take on this approach.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, the proof is in the pudding, and that's kind of what I teach all the time. And one other thing that I've heard recently that I thought was really fascinating, that if you think about some of the most up and coming and successful businesses nowadays, and I'm just going to use a real estate example because you all know it, which is EXP and the owner of EXP, which is Glenn Sanford, right? And he is doing an incredible job. They are by far and away the fastest growing real estate company that exists currently. I would argue has taken over, from a growth perspective, the trajectory of what Keller Williams was years ago. And why? Because Glenn is more real than Gary Keller is. And that's where I think, and again, I have no fight, I have no dog in the fight. I'm in the mortgage business. I love every realtor, right? But the reality is that's why Glenn is winning. And that's why, and you can equate this to so many other different big companies. And the reason, and the ones that are evolving and the ones that are growing are the ones who are putting the forward facing or the owner or the founder or the big dog out on an authentic and a personal level. And so us as real estate professionals, as salespeople, we have to look at ourselves as our own enterprise, our own business. And the reality is the audience wants to get to know us better. And so for me, Nick, as you mentioned and talked about, and if you ever heard me speak, I talk about this. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the only way to do it. But what I've learned is that it's an easier way to do it. It's way harder for me, and I think for most of you, to come up with consistent content that will actually drive engagement, that where you're talking about business. And the only successful way to do that is probably edutainment, which is like TikTok-ish style, which is obviously the future of content, but that's a lot harder for most of us. So the easier route for me is, hell, I'm just going to give you the Fitzer reality TV show, because that's easy, because that's already what I'm doing with my life. And then it resonates, and then I create the parasocial relationships. And before you know it, people are wanting to get to know me better and even work with me because they know me. And that's where I win. And so I hope that helps, Nick. That's kind of what I have to add to that.
No, I love that. Yeah. I think for me, there's another example I just want to mention, because there's such a temptation to talk about what you do for a living when all people really want to do is just get to know you better. And so one example from a student we had the other day was she was sending birthday video messages. Some we preach, hardcore is like the easiest place to probably ever start with videos, to send people birthday video messages. And you would think, okay, I can see how that's good at, just sort of staying in touch with people and building the relationship. But how's that going to get me real estate business? Well, she got a $3.2 million listing as a result of her birthday video message, right? And if you want to understand why, it's not because she said, hey, by the way, if you're thinking about selling at the end of her birthday video, she just said happy birthday, but she stuck in their mind, right? She got that mind share. They were so appreciative of her doing that because they didn't get other birthday videos. So she stood out to that person. It felt more real. It felt like it was face to face. It feels more meaningful and authentic than just simply posting on their wall. And so they kept thinking about her, right? And then in the next couple of days, when they were talking to their significant other about how they were thinking about moving, she was there, right? She was still there in their mind, the first agent that they thought of. So it's just one little anecdote, but I think this stuff is just so incredibly powerful that we really don't need to be constantly talking about our business. And there are ways to talk about your business, but you don't need to do it in every single video. In fact, you probably should not do it in hardly any of your content. All right. So that's as much as I wanted to go down that rabbit hole today. We could talk about that forever. Let's get into how to actually use the season of giving to grow your business. Right now, I started with that intro, and I felt that was important to talk about because this is really what it comes down to. A lot of people, when they come into, okay, I want to do something to give back. I want to support some nonprofit organizations in my community, or I want to support a good cause. A lot of times then the question is, but how do I turn that into something that's going to grow my business? And so we're going to show you how to do this in a way that has very little to do with your business, because that's how you build parasocial relationships. So for some of you, that should be a big relief, right? You don't have to make a video where you say, hey, I want you to support this cause. By the way, I'm a real estate agent. You just got to make the video where you support the great cause. People will get to like you and trust you more because they can see how much you care about these causes that are outside of your own selfish interest, right? And they're going to appreciate that. So let's talk about how we recommend you do that. Well, the season of giving. First of all, what is the season of giving? The season of giving is essentially the holiday season. And it sort of runs from Thanksgiving until, I would say, New Year's, right? Or Thanksgiving to Christmas. And it's not necessarily like an official season or anything, but statistically speaking, nonprofits raise over half of all of their funding during that window of time, right? And you can probably guess why. There's two reasons why. Number one, people are in that kind of spirit, right? This is the time of year where we're thinking about giving back and being appreciative and grateful, and we're willing and ready and able to make donations to these kind of organizations. The second reason, which you could probably guess, is taxes. So, there's a lot of incentive to try to get some money out of your bank account at the end of the year if you're going to save some money on taxes as a result, right? So that's why the end of the year tends to be this giant contribution. And I don't know what the exact number is, but I'm pretty sure that the funds raised on December 31st are much larger than any other day in the year because people like to procrastinate, right? So that's why this is the right time of year to do this, right? Now, you can do this any time of year. It's always going to resonate well, but you'll get extra attention during the season of giving because that's where people's attention is, right? These are the things we're thinking about. We're seeing all these appeals from all these nonprofits. It's putting us in that sort of mind space. And so this is why it's such a good opportunity, right? Now, what we would recommend you do is really simple. And it's just to choose a nonprofit, and then to create a fundraising video for that nonprofit, and then put it out as far as you can. Spread it as far and wide as possible. Now, we're going to show you some tips and tricks on how to do that. If you're seeing that and you're going, you know what, that's intimidating. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put a video out on social media or send an email. You can send video messages instead. All right. One person at a time. That is all it takes. Now, you could do this other ways. We're talking about video. This is Business Video School. You knew we were going to talk about video today, but you could do it other ways, right? You could reach out by text. You can make phone calls, all of that. I will tell you hands down, it will perform better if video is your primary form of communication, right? So maybe you do some follow-up by text, some follow-up by email. But if you lead with video, either through video messaging or through a video you create and put out on social or send out to your network, you're going to get better results because of the emotional impact of video. There are really no other forms of communication that come close when it comes to emotional communication, right? You can see the person's facial expressions. You can watch their body language. You can hear the tone of voice. And so your passion, your enthusiasm for this cause comes through on video in a way it will not in any other form of communication, right? So you will raise more money. You'll raise more awareness. Think of it this way. If you make a video and even somebody doesn't donate from it, but they hear about the mission of that organization, they'll remember that mission for weeks and weeks, if not months and years to come after that, right? If you said the same thing through an email that was, just straight up text, they're not going to remember it a week later, right? That sort of stuff has been pretty officially proven at this point. So that's why we really encourage you to think video, but you can do video messages. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's going out to a public audience, right? So if you want to do it one at a time, you can. It's not quite as efficient though. So do keep that in mind. All right. So now how do you do
Nick,
this?
Can I add real quickly? One thing I want to add to that as well when it just comes to shooting video, because actually it's funny, I'm typing up an email to my group right now and sharing BombBomb stats for the month of October. And it's always disappointing in how there's a small minority who are using it at a high level and some that aren't. And the way I titled the email was I said, attention is the new currency. Have you heard that expression? Or people give in to the people they see the most. And I said, there's that and dozens of other expressions or phrases that you've been seeing nowadays. And these aren't just expressions or sales lines. That's reality. And unless you are incredibly creative with graphics and captioning, or you are a master at telemarketing and prospecting or door knocking or something like that, you can't fight what's coming. And Nick, you've probably heard me say this before. I remember my grandpa always saying, I'm not going to use that stupid computer. Right. And those of you that are in my generation, you probably can remember your parents or grandparents saying the same thing. And now we find ourselves, our own generation saying, oh gosh, like about TikTok, is this what the world is coming to? Which is basically the same thing that our grandfather said about using computers and social media in general. And it's like, you can fight this crap until you're blue in the face, but it's the ones who are going to succeed at the highest level going forward in the future are the ones that embrace this stuff. And if you're not using video, you are absolutely 1,000,000% handicapping your business, period. End of story.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I'm glad you're chiming in here, Jeff, because I want you to add something further. So when we talk about not being sleazy, in a lot of ways, here's what I'm going to recommend. Do not mention your business in your video. All right. Do not say I'm a real estate agent. Don't say the name of your company. You can introduce yourself with your actual name, but that's as far as I would go with the branding of the marketing. So Jeff, I know this is kind of what you're a master at, is how to find ways to subtly add the sort of business hint. So I think a few of them are listed on the screen here, but can you talk a little bit about how you do this in a lot of your content without ever saying what you do?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, it's well, first of all, I've built a brand around branding and wearing hats. It's a funny story. It started with my, a dermatologist saying that I needed to cover my head, and then it just turned into, I'm just going to make this my brand, and what I realized was, I don't have to talk about my business because I don't want to, because it's boring. Nobody's getting onto Facebook or Instagram or any of the platforms to learn about your latest listing. Nobody's getting on there to hear about the latest, Monday market update or the latest market stats. Nobody cares. That's not why they're getting on social, or that's not why they're logging into their email or checking their text messages. They get annoyed with you if that's what you talk about. And so you can subtly remind people just by simply adding a logo onto your video. Like if you have some editing skills, or you're using a platform like Aviva Video or whatever, or you're wearing a hat or you're wearing a shirt. I mean, I have agents that I coach that do community videos, and they always want to say, hey, it's so-and-so with XYZ Realty. And I'm like, no, don't do that. I'm like, just wear it on your shirt, because ultimately at the end of the day, you're building status amongst a community. And more than anything, you're just reminding the people that you're interviewing to become part of your network. And if you're there with them and they see that, they're going to know, and don't overthink it, because actually being subtle is more of an attractant, because more people are going to engage and watch your stuff than if you get on there and start, kind of sounding like a used car salesman. It just immediately turns people off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna take that a step further, which is not really a step further. I just say that if you are willing to just let all of that go for this particular video, I think that's not a bad idea, right? I think it's not a bad idea to make this video 100% about the nonprofit you're trying to support. And the benefit that you're going to get is all the warm and fuzzy feelings all those people are going to have about you as a result of you doing this, right? So I think, there's all kinds of ways to track who watched the video and follow up with stuff that is more promotional, that has your logo in it, all that kind of stuff. But I think the more you move away from anybody being able to interpret this as a secret ad, then you're gonna do better, right? And you got to remember, like, for every just tiny bit of somebody being that much more excited about this video, right? Let's say you don't put a logo in it at all, and that makes one more person likely to share it. That's dozens, if not hundreds of additional people that are going to see that message, right? As more money you're going to raise for the nonprofit, it's more awareness you're going to build for them. It's more awareness you're going to build for your business. And so so this is how you approach it, right? And everything Jeff is saying is 100% valid. Obviously, we have it in the slide here, but if it was me, I would go all the way. And I would just say, strip any branding whatsoever out of this particular video, because the relationship you're forming with the audience is what matters, right? Now, there's one other benefit here. And this is, to me, I think this is something a lot of people under kind of value, and that is the relationship with the nonprofit, right? So the fact that you're building this relationship with that organization, and again, they're going to be okay with you being a little bit self-promotional, right? They'll take whatever they can get. These groups tend to be very open to what you're going to do to help them raise money and awareness. But if you don't try to promote yourself at all, if you just sort of remove that aspect altogether, it's going to start that relationship on a really, really positive place. And let's say they have 5 or 10 other real estate agents that tend to support them, but you come in and you're the first to make a video and you're the first not to try to use it to promote your business. They're going to really like you, right? They're going to be a little bit more likely to recommend you over some of those other agents. They're going to be likely to invite you to some of their events or give you additional partner opportunities, all that kind of stuff, right? So just keep that in mind. But if you do want to do it, everything you see here, everything that we talked about today is 100% valid. Just don't talk about the business, right? If it's a subtle hint, right? You can see everything we suggested here is visual, right? If you share it through the business page, you put your logo in it, you wear your logo on your clothing, that's a visual hint, right? That's a visual representation. You're not saying it, right? So if you put it in there visually, it just sort of feels as like a secondary effect. If you state it out loud, hey, by the way, I'm an agent, here's how you can hire me, then that's going to flip the switch and they're going to go, you know what? This is a promotional video, right? So don't say it at any point. I watch people do these where they'll deliver a great message, and at the very end, they'll say, oh, by the way, I'm Nick with this real estate company. And it always just has the same effect. It's just a kind of groan, right? Like, oh man, like this is just an ad, right? So just keep that in mind. But that's how you go about approaching this in a way that's not sleazy. Again, if you're focused on the organization, you're focused on the audience, you shouldn't have to worry about that.
Can I also say, Nick, that the one thing that I think you guys all got to remember is that if you're looking for get rich quick, you're in the wrong place. And that's pretty much applies to anything. So unless you want an immediate potential reward, then you got to spend a lot of money on bottom of funnel leads and just deal with it, right? That's the reality. This is a longer game. And if you don't look at it as in you're trying to build a relationship with your audience, I always use the example that, when you went on a date with your future spouse, you probably, I don't want to say everybody doesn't qualify as this, but you probably didn't get them in the sack on the first date. And if you would have, it probably would have never turned into a second date if you would have even implied that. So this is the same concept, is that it's going to take time, and try to position yourself as an advisor, as an educator, as someone who brings value, and you'll get much bigger and better results in the long term.
Very true. All right, so let's talk about how to do it. What's the approach here, right? So step number 1 is pretty obvious, which is you need to identify a nonprofit to support. So how do you choose the nonprofit organization, right? So I have some for you. I'm going to give you in just a second. But what I would really recommend here is either find a nonprofit that aligns in some way with your business mission, right? Because that's going to make a lot of sense. And again, it's going to remind people of what you do without having to say what you do. Or find a nonprofit that aligns with your personal experiences, right? I mean, those are both going to be really valid. And what's going to happen here is if you are able to find one that has alignment with one of those two things, your enthusiasm, your excitement, your passion for this content is going to be there, right? You're going to actually be enthusiastic and upbeat and, fun to watch. If you choose a nonprofit that has no interest to you because you're just trying to play the marketing game, that's just not going to work as well, right? You could do that, and maybe it's like the big nonprofit in town, so it has a big brand, and that could be beneficial to you. But I think if you can find one, even if they're a little bit more obscure, that aligns with either the business mission or your personal experience, you're going to make better content, you're going to make better video, and you're probably going to raise a lot more funds and awareness, right? Just because it's a group you care about. So how do you find the organization? Well, here's a bunch of ideas for you. All right. So these are all of our partners in our upcoming fundraising video challenge. I'm going to come back to that at the end of the presentation. But if you want to participate in that challenge, that's going to be an opportunity for you. It's going to be a pretty straightforward way to implement this strategy we're talking about today. But if you want to do this yourself, these are a bunch of really great options, right? So we got Foundation 99, we got Home by Hand, Sell a Home, Save a Child, which is powered by Forward Edge, Sunshine Kids, Homes for Our Troops, Habitat for Humanity, the Tion Realty, News Story, and the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. All right. So almost all of these organizations are related to real estate, right? We got some of them that are building houses for people that can't afford them or that live in complete poverty. We've got people here talking about, sort of financial well-being and long-term wealth for families based on real estate. But all of these organizations have a tie-in to real estate. We literally met all of these organizations through a post in LabCoatAgents, right? So there you go. There's a sort of meta experience for you. So Tristan, he shared a post a couple of weeks ago looking for real estate related nonprofits. And these are all companies that came up in that search. So you can choose from these, right? There's a lot of options out there. But there's other options as well, right? So if you don't see something here that's the right fit for you, and what I'd recommend is do a little bit of research, get on their website, see what their mission's all about. Don't just pick one randomly. If you find one that's got really sort of an exciting story to tell, that's going to make everything you're doing a little bit easier, right? So the first thing that you're going to need to do is choose the nonprofit. Now, you just need to choose them. However, I would strongly recommend you use this as an opportunity to try to build a relationship with that nonprofit, right? What I have found, having done these challenges now a couple times, is that different nonprofits are going to have different attitudes about what they want you to say or do in the video. Some of them are going to say whatever you want, just send people to this website and they'll donate and that'll be great, right? Others are going to say, we need to approve the video. We need to have a whole bunch of control over this, right? Typically, the bigger they are, the more control they're going to want to have. So keep that in mind. If you want to easy turnaround, just make something and get it out there. Maybe choose a smaller local nonprofit that doesn't have a bunch of compliance steps, right? But if you're going to do that, make sure you go through the right channels. Last thing you want to do is put something out there that you then get asked to take down, God forbid, right? Like that would be the worst possible scenario, all that work for nothing. So make sure you just get some permission, talk to them. But then the positive side of it is they're going to help, right? They're going to help with maybe some pictures and images. In fact, all the nonprofits that are in our challenge are providing, scripting materials, what to say, what not to say, images, video clips, logo, all that kind of stuff, right? So that'll give you a bunch of extra material to work with. And then they're going to probably promote your video. They're going to share it to their audience. They're going to talk to their community about you and what you do. And that's going to really form at least the start of a very promising relationship. And so, being involved in nonprofits, it can be great just from the standpoint of, doing something worthwhile and giving back and supporting a great mission, but it can also be extremely beneficial for your business, right? So there are going to be a lot of other business owners involved in these organizations, a lot of great networking opportunities. So keep all that in mind, right? If you can build a relationship with that particular organization, that's going to go a long way. So let's talk next. Let's plan and create your fundraising video. Now, I'm not going to go through everything about this process, right? Obviously, we could take hours teaching you how to make a video. What I want to emphasize here, all right, the most important thing when it comes to making your video is just that your passion shows through. That's it, okay? It's not that it's very polished. It doesn't have to be fancy. I'm going to give you basically just one tip on the quality of your video here in just a couple minutes. But I want to start by mentioning that, right? What people are going to care about is your enthusiasm. They're going to care about your passion, the story that you're telling. They're going to want to hear the story of this organization and why they maybe should also care about what this organization does, right? So that's what you got to focus on here. What doesn't matter, what you shouldn't worry about at all, is the overall quality of the video, as long as you shot it on a remotely decent camera. And I'll tell you right now, if your phone's less than probably 4 years old at this point, you've got a good enough camera right there. All right. So your quality is going to be there. And like I said, I'm going to give you one tip the only real quality tip I think you need, but otherwise just focus on delivering the message enthusiastically, right? That's what we really want to focus on here. So let's talk about the approaches that you can take. Now, the first approach, the most simple approach to this is to send video messages, right? Now, if you're going to send a video message, what I would recommend you do is I would recommend that you script that video message. What's going to happen is if you're doing video messaging, and this, what that means, you're going to send an individual video to each person, right? Now, this is the right fit for somebody who's just terrified of putting a video out on social media because it's going to be more work. If you want to contact the same number of people, if I take a video and I put it out on social media and I share it to a few local groups and, post it a couple different times, I can get it seen by hundreds of people, right? Probably thousands of total people. If I have to send an individual message to that same number of people, it's definitely going to take me more time, right? So you got to keep that in mind, right? If you're feeling nervous about doing it this way, well, this way might take a lot more time. And that's the trade-off, right? Are your nerves and protecting your ego worth that extra time? However, that being said, personalized messages are extremely impactful, right? If you were to just simply come up and again, I would say create a little bit of a script, right? At least should be short, under 30 seconds or so, and then just practice, right? So practice that script over and over and over again, and then you don't need it anymore, right? Then you've got kind of and again, you're not trying to deliver it, especially in a video message word for word. You're just trying to get the gist across, right? You're trying to share that story with the recipient, right? Now, the other way to do it is to outline it and talk sort of more off the cuff, right? So you basically just have a few bullet points. You want to have those bullet points in front of you as you're going, but otherwise the actual message they're delivering is going to be a little bit fluid, right? And if you do it that way, that's fine. What you're probably going to find is that if you have it scripted, you're going to do multiple takes just because you might trip up on the script and want to redo it. If you do it off the cuff, you're going to have to do multiple takes because you're going to keep changing what you say, right? So that's the trade-off. You're going to probably do more than one take in both cases. But if you don't have a script and you haven't thought too much about what you're saying, overall, the recording will take you longer in my experience, unless you're super experienced at doing this stuff and you can bang out a 2-minute video in one take, no problem without a script. And that's hard, right? That's going to take a lot of practice to get to that point. So next thing you want to think about once you decide sort of how you want to prepare for the video is what is the story, all right? How are we going to tell the story? We're going to give you a little bit of a tip on that in just a second, but you got to tell a story, all right? This is the most important part of this kind of video is that you have to have a story worth telling. Now, the nonprofits will give you a story, okay? They're going to tell you their story, why they were founded, who they support, maybe some case studies of the kinds of people that they've helped in the past. That's fair game, right? So if that's what you want to go with, if you want to tell that story, do so, but you want to make sure you tell it like it's your own, right? You want to talk about these things like it's something you experience. So if it doesn't resonate at all and you want to tell more of a personal story, that's totally fine, but you got to have some kind of story. If this video is just you saying, hey, there's this great nonprofit and they support homeless people and you need to give them some money because we want to help them out, you'll get some donations, but you're not going to get the same amount of donations, right? So ultimately, I personally think a personal story is going to be best here, right? Now, this is where you have to make a decision about vulnerability. How vulnerable do you want to be, right? How honest do you want to be with your audience? Are you okay with telling a story that might not be the most comfortable story to tell? And what I will encourage you is this is the opportunity to push yourself. Okay. Now don't do something that's going to make you just extremely uncomfortable and terrified to ever share the video. Okay. We don't need to tell our deepest, darkest secrets here. But if you have a story that you can incorporate from your personal life, maybe it's even about somebody you know who matters a lot to you, but it's not about your own personal experience, that's probably going to be a great story as well, as long as they're okay with you telling it. Maybe just tell it anonymously, as long as they give you permission, don't talk about somebody without them saying that's okay. But those kinds of stories are going to go a long way, right? Because if we can show people through our story what we experienced or what someone else experienced, that's going to resonate, right? And that's going to also show people why we're so passionate about this nonprofit. So one thing I will say about the story component is you're almost certainly going to want to cut it down, right? When we tell stories, we tend to get long-winded and elaborative and try to incorporate lots of detail to make the story feel real. A lot of that is good. That's a positive thing, but you got to balance that with the fact that this is a video. This isn't captive audience across the counter in your kitchen having a drink on a Friday night, right? These people are going to give you a couple seconds and then decide if they want to move on. So take your long-winded version that maybe is 2 or 3 minutes long, try to cut it down as much as you can without losing any of the impact, right? So the only kind of point I'm getting at there is that if you are going to tell a story, I would, number one, write it all out and then edit it down as much as you think you can without losing any of the impact. And you can usually go further than you might think. You don't have to use it word for word from that point. You don't have to necessarily use that as a script, but at least then you're going to know how to tell the story in a short, succinct package, right? So if you can aim for the story portion of this video to be 30 seconds or less, and that's a fair number of sentences, it might not sound like much, but it's a decent amount, you're probably in good shape. If your story drones on for over a minute, you're going to lose people, even if it's really impactful. Now, if you have a super impressive story and you've got really good editing and you want to show a bunch of pictures and video clips, you can certainly go longer, but obviously most of the audience we speak with is a little bit newer to video, and I don't want you to feel like you need to do any editing. So I think that's probably a good place to go, right? Got a little bit ahead of myself. I already made that last point there about contacting the nonprofits, but that is something that's highly recommended. In fact, a lot of them will set up a dedicated fundraising page for you, right? You want to talk about where you can put your logo, that's a place to put your logo, right? So then you can put out a video that doesn't talk about your business, drive people to your fundraising page, and then all of a sudden, that's where your business logo shows up, right? They see, oh, it's Nick Niehaus Real Estate Company, and that's where they see it, and that's going to make sense, right? Because they know that it's you and your business organizing this. That's a nice little reminder at that point, probably not going to impact whether or not they donate, right? So that's an opportunity to get your brand in there. And a lot of them will set up that custom page for you. And then you also can keep track of your numbers. It gives you a good sense of, set a goal, right? So to come up with a number, what you're trying to raise, and then you can keep track of that and make adjustments throughout your campaign if you need to. Last point on this slide is just a quick tip on the Teleprompter app, Big View. So BIGVU. Now that's a teleprompter app that we teach on in the school. We love it. It's very easy to use. If you have a script, I would strongly recommend using the Big View teleprompter app. All right. Now I'm not going to get into how to use it today. You'd obviously need to look into that yourself, but it is very easy to use. One cool fact about it is that you can write your script on your computer. You can put it into the Big View browser app, right? So you can go onto their website and upload your video script, and then it will show up in the app on your phone within about 30 seconds, right? So that's pretty cool because a lot of times we get people that are a little frustrated with how to get things from their computer to their phone. With Big View, you just do it through the website, no problem whatsoever, right? So I'm going to give you a couple more tips.
Oh, I wanted to make a video.
I'm going to show this video now. I actually didn't realize it was embedded, so that's great. I'm going to go ahead and play this now. This is an example of a video like this that Michael from Business Video School made.
So that is a bit different from the usual content that I put out. I've been challenged to create a video of a nonprofit that I'm passionate about through this fundraising video challenge. And I figured it would push me to speak about something different and give me a great opportunity to do some good and help this organization. So this nonprofit is called the Liam Michael Foundation. It's a suicide prevention and awareness organization that was started actually by my aunt. You see, Liam was my cousin, and in 2015, he took his own life just before he turned 18 years old. He suffered for years with OCD and extreme depression that he ultimately succumbed to at this very young age. His mom started this organization after his passing to not only help raise awareness about the rising suicide rates in the US, but also to give back, particularly in the form of a scholarship to a talented and deserving musician each year. You see, my cousin Liam was an extremely talented pianist. He had been playing the piano since he was little and became a virtuoso, not only in performance, but also in composition. He was a bright young man with a natural talent that exceeded his age by decades. And as it goes, sometimes his intelligence and raw talent came with an equal amount of pain and struggle. So this organization is using music as the vessel to further this mission of suicide awareness and prevention. So I'm making this video for a few reasons, I think. I want you to be aware of the disturbing rise of suicides in the US. These are your neighbors, your coworkers, and sometimes most troubling, your family. I want you to donate, if you can, to this great organization that is trying to tackle this really big problem in this really unique way. I'll leave a link to their website in the comments as well as in my post. But most of all, I want to challenge you to think about those around you differently. we always have a choice, right? We can get all wrapped up in our own heads and think that everyone is out to get us, making us angry and defensive at the world and those who get in our way. Or we can choose to view things differently. We can assume that everyone is currently or has relatively recently gone through something absolutely terrible, that they are silently suffering daily, and our interaction with them can either push them over the edge or offer them a bit of respite in this sea of suffering. I'm challenging you to be softer, to use a lighter touch, to be kinder. Because when you choose to be kinder, you get to wade in that kindness yourself. Thanks for watching.
All right, so pretty impressive video there. Now, I do want to just point out, Michael is a professional, okay? So I don't want you to look at that and feel like you got to nail that quite as well as he did, right? Now, obviously, he did some awesome work with editing. It was shot with just a phone. It's just a basic, phone video, but he did add a lot of elements there and music as well. I don't know, Jeff, if you had something to add there.
I do. I was going to say that Michael is a professional and I'm not. I've practiced a lot and I'm a big fan of going back to what you were just talking about with the teleprompter. And again, if you've heard me speak, this is the latest thing that I would talk about a lot. It's a secret weapon. It's not a secret, but you just learn how to use it. It's actually quite simple. You spend 10 or 15 minutes scripting your videos, which will save you hours of pain of videoing and re-videoing and reshooting and getting it just right. And you can sound like Michael, or go stalk any of my content and you'll see most of my talking head videos are scripted with a teleprompter, and you just practice with it and it makes you look and sound super eloquent. And because you eliminate ums and you eliminate a lot of pauses, you eliminate all the stuff that makes you look like an amateur. And for those of you, the 37 of you that are on this, you are creating an upper hand just by learning that. And if you learn how to script and use a teleprompter, I'm telling you right now, you're going to absolutely differentiate yourself and your market. And Michael is amazing, but even Michael, as good as he is, needed a teleprompter to do it that well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's using all the exact same stuff that any of the rest of us can. And, he's going to probably come across as just a little more polished than the rest of us, but there's no reason we can't also create videos that are that impactful. And obviously what's impactful about the video is the way that he told that story, right? Now, he spent, I think, a little more than 30 seconds telling the story. So obviously that kind of contradicts what I said, except he added the editing, right? So he had, and you saw what he did, right? He's got some music in the background. He's got some cutaways, right? He's got some images that he added. There's a graph that he threw in there. So you can add some length if you're going to add some variety to the visuals and the audio, and you're going to do some editing, right? If you're going to keep it short and simple and you're not going to mess with editing, which if you have not done any editing before, that is the route I would recommend. In that case, you do want to be a little bit more succinct if possible, just because you won't have as much other variety in the video to keep people interested, right? So we're still we're still animals ultimately, right? And even if the story is really important and really impactful, it always helps to add elements that keep us focused and engaged. So there you go. So that's an example. So let's talk a little bit about how you can put your video script together. And again, I'm not going to give you every little detail here. Obviously, there's a million things we could be talking about. But let's go ahead and take a look at this structure. And I saw, let me check the chat real quick. I think we had a question come through. What's the name of the company app where you upload your script? So it's called Big View. Let me just go back to that slide again. So this logo right here, BIGVU, that is the Teleprompter app where you can upload the video on your computer and then get it over to your phone. I don't remember off the top of my head if that's part of the free version or not, but there is a free version and there's also a paid version. So I would download the free version first, use it to whatever extent you think you need it. And then there are also some really cool editing features if you do decide to get the paid version. All right. Okay. So let's talk about, planning out the script, or at least the structure of the video a little bit, the story that you're going to be telling. And you've seen us talk about this before. I'm not going to dwell on it for too super long. But depending on what it is that you're talking about in the video, it always helps to have a hook, right? It always helps to tell people right off the bat what the video is going to be about. Now, this is where you want to be careful, right? You don't want to use a ton of flashiness if you're talking about a sensitive subject, right? Obviously, there's a lot of things you could say or do at the beginning of a video that would get someone's attention, but maybe is not the most kind way to get that attention. So be careful, right? We're not trying to make caricatures out of people. We're not trying to use inappropriate props or anything like that. And the reason I bring that up is that a lot of these nonprofits work with, the homeless, right? That they're working with a group of people that often are kind of characterized in the United States. So be careful, right? Just be careful with the hook. But you can say or do something at the beginning that's going to really grab someone's attention, right? So what is it you can say or do or show in the first few seconds that is going to get that attention, right? Can you make a bold statement? Can you ask a question that's going to grab somebody? Second thing you're going to want to do is the body, right? Now the body, I'm not going to get into much detail here because that's the story, right? We already showed you an example of a story. We talked a little bit about how to put one together. That's where you're going to want to tell the story. That's where you're getting people bought into why they're going to make a contribution, right? And then the closing. And here's what I really recommend. I only recommend one call to action. Now, I know in Michael's example, he had sort of a couple things, a couple takeaways, and that is okay, right? But if you give someone just one call to action, they're more likely to take any action, right? So the more clear we can be, the better. And so I actually think it also even helps to suggest a donation amount, right? Now, it can be a small amount, right? So maybe you say, if you could make a donation of even just $5 or even just 10 or even just 20 or whatever number you want to start at, what'll happen is by asking for a donation, so being specific and saying, here's how you can help. You can make a contribution today. Please consider donating this much or more, right? What that's going to do is tell people exactly what they should do next. Click the link, whatever process you set up to collect the donations, and it's going to give them a number, right? So now you've given them information. They're going to give at least that amount. A lot of them will give more, right? If you don't give them a number, you will have some people who do not make a donation because they're still confused what would be appropriate, right? So they don't want to go on and make a $25 contribution, and that's chump change, and they feel like they look bad, right? Or you don't have somebody feeling like if they go on and give $500, it's going to look like they're money bags or something, right? So just be upfront as much as you can, and then leave it open ended, and that'll help you maximize your donations. All right. All right, so here's just a quick example of this. This is just sort of something we made up, so don't feel like you have to use this word for word. But this is, for instance, if you were talking about a nonprofit organization that supports child hunger, right? So the hook example might be, can you imagine going to bed hungry every night as a child, laying awake for hours because your stomach hurts? It sounds terrible, but that's what as many as 20% of children in America experience, right? That's going to hook somebody's attention, right? It's going to grab them. And hey, well, if they care about this, if they care about the idea of children going to bed hungry, they're going to respond to that, right? And then closing. So I got to ask a favor to ask you, can you contribute a small donation? Every dollar counts as we work to serve as many families in need as possible. Please consider donating today to support this great cause by clicking the link near this video. So in this example, we didn't say an exact dollar amount, but we did say small donation, right? And the idea behind that, again, is to give people permission to give any amount, right? So I would say, if you want to be specific, which I do probably recommend, I would say, if you can give $10 or more, if you can give $20 or more, and that's just going to depend a little bit on your market. A lot of times people don't think about that, but, in St. Louis, giving a $10 donation might be equivalent to giving a $20 donation in some of the bigger cities on the coast where the cost of living is much higher, right? So you do want to cater that a little bit to your area and make sure that you're asking for an appropriate amount of money for the people that live in your community, right? And if you're friends with a bunch of rich people, then say $100 or more and try to see how much you can maximize your donations, right? We just obviously don't want to ostracize anybody by making that number too high. All right, now I promised you one quick tip on the quality of your video. This to me is the easiest thing to fix and has the largest impact on how your video looks, okay? And that is what direction the light is shining. That's it, right? A lot of times we get questions all the time about lights. What kind of light should I buy? What kind of, what spectrum of light do I need? All this kind of stuff, right? And there are answers to those questions. There's obviously, here's the answer to the spectrum question, which is you want it as close to sunlight as possible, right? So we're basically trying to get just a simulation of the sun whenever we can. But all that stuff really sort of doesn't matter when you're just getting started. Here's the one thing you need to keep in mind. is the light shining toward your face from the same direction as the camera. Okay. So again, the light should shine the same direction the camera is pointing. So if the camera is pointing this way, it's pointing toward my face. The light should be somewhere over here, also pointing toward my face. Okay. That's all it really comes down to, because what we want is we want the camera to not see any weird shadows on our face. Okay. If the light is overhead, it is probably the worst possible scenario. That very first picture, that's what the overhead light's on directly above me. The second picture is with those overhead lights turned off, and I'm simply standing in front of a window. It wasn't sunny that day. It was actually overcast. In fact, overcast days end up usually producing the best possible kind of light. So keep that in mind, right? But all I want you to remember here is just experiment. Here's the number one thing I recommend people do, and actually just go ahead and do this at home if you want. But turn your camera on, turn your selfie camera on, and just walk around, move around in your chair, keep an eye on your face. Don't trip over anything if you're walking, right? But, walk around your house a little bit, go stand in front of a couple of your windows and just see how you look. And the funny thing is that most people just have never tried this. You're going to find spots in your house or your office where you go, ooh, I look pretty good right there. I don't see any of my wrinkles. I don't see any of my anything I don't like about my face. We all have things we don't like about ourselves, I think. And there's a couple of us maybe that don't, but for most of us, we're going to have something we're insecure about. I certainly do. But that's going to help minimize the appearance of any of that stuff, right? So do a little experimentation. And here's why. It's not necessarily that it matters a ton to the viewer. It can, right? But it's for you. It's for your confidence. If hey, in this spot, I actually kind of don't mind how I look in my videos, you're going to deliver your message a lot better, right? You're going to deliver it with a lot more enthusiasm, and it's going to come across much, much more positively, right? So that's one little thing. It's probably the most impactful change we can make in our videos. Easiest thing to do out there. You just got to move around a little bit, and you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how much better you can make yourself look just by thinking about the direction the light is shining, right? So one more time, the light should shine toward your face in the same direction the camera is pointing, right? Okay. Last step here, and then we're going to get wrapped up, is how do I then get the maximize the amount of attention? Okay. This is really it. Now I could go through and tell you a whole bunch of different tips and tricks on how to put your video out in front of people. Most of us know those tips and tricks, right? Post it on your business page, post it on your personal Facebook page, post it on Instagram, post it on LinkedIn, post it on all the social media sites that you use. Link to it and send a text, link to it and put in an email, right? I mean, all these things are pretty straightforward, but this is the part most people don't get right, which is I truly fundamentally believe if you were to spend as much time promoting your video as you did creating it, you are going to get so much better results, right? I cannot tell you. I mean, we used to have people come in, we'd make them a video, they'd spend hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars on these videos. They would take it, they'd post it on social media one time, and then they'd be like, all right, well, I guess I'm done, right? Is that all the result that I get from this video? And obviously you'd be like, well, you posted it to your Facebook page once. So no, you could definitely get more results from it, because only maybe 3% of the people who follow your page ever even had a chance to see it because of the way these platforms work, right? So post often, come back and repost it. If you get out there and you make this video sometime over the next few weeks, you can share it coming out of the Thanksgiving period. It can be promoted all throughout the month of December, and you can absolutely maximize the amount of money that you raise, right? So here's just sort of two sides to this. And this is basically one of the last things we're going to talk about to get wrapped up here, but you can send one-to-one video and you can send mass video communication, right? So I honestly recommend combining them, right? If you want to make a video that goes out to everyone, I think that's a great idea. But then those people who are closer to you, send them a personalized video message as well, right? You can use BombBomb, Dub, Loom. There's a company called Vidyard, Vidyard. They actually make a tool that's honestly pretty close to BombBomb, but it's free. So if you want to go that route, that's going to give you a video messaging tool. And I would do both, right? I would put your public facing video out there on social media, drop it in emails, send it all over the place. And then I would also send one-to-one video messages. And if you don't want to do the first, you don't want to put your video out on social, just focus on the video messages. All right. I know I talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the presentation. So that's obviously a good place to end. But if you can use both, you're going to maximize your results. All right. Okay, so we are at the end of our presentation for today. I do want to thank you for joining. I do have one last thing that I'm going to throw here into the chat. So just take a look at the chat really quickly. Let me go ahead and get this entered. Just make sure I'm copying the right thing here. Sometimes I end up pasting the wrong thing into the chat, and I don't want to do that. So let me make sure. All right, so there's two things that I want to talk about really quickly. Right now in the chat, so if you've watched this presentation, you feel like, you know what, this sounds like a good idea. I think I want to make a video for a nonprofit. Well, we organized our own version of this exact approach called the Fundraising Video Challenge. It's going to run starting from November 15th all the way through the end of December. And what we're doing right now is we're putting together teams. So you saw the nonprofits that we listed earlier, and that link in the chat right now is if you would like to get together and organize a team, right? Now that might sound like a lot of work. It isn't. All you're really going to be doing is just putting out some posts, some emails, maybe some phone calls, whatever approach you want to take. We're providing all the content. So the social media graphics, the email templates, everything you need to collect a team of people that want to support this nonprofit during the challenge. And then we're going to provide everything else. We're going to provide all the training for free. There's a workbook for the challenge. We have Q&As, live Q&As for anybody that needs help as we're going through it. And we are going to have prizes for the teams that raise the most total money at the end of the challenge. So that being said, if that sounds awesome and you're going, you know what? Yeah, that sounds like a great way to really promote my business and build relationships with some people. That link is in the chat right now. I want you to go ahead and take a second, click it, and go ahead and register. What'll happen is after you register, we will get in touch with you in the coming couple days, and we'll get you set up with everything you need to do, right? So everything you need to do to promote and get some people registered. And then once they're registered, we're going to take care of the rest, right? You're just sort of organizing a group of people that want to make some videos. Now, even if they don't make a video, they can help promote, right? So if they don't feel like they want to do the video part themselves, they can share the other videos that are being made on the team, okay? So one last quick reminder, click that link in the chat right now if you would like to get a team registered. Now, second thing I'll mention is if you're sitting there and you're going, well, that sounds interesting, but I need some more information before I can decide I want to set up a team, I have a second link for you, okay? So the second link, the one I just posted into the chat, and by the way, if you asked a question, I'll come back to the questions in just a second. I apologize, but I want to make sure we get this done in time. Second, the link I just posted now is for an informational meeting I'm holding tomorrow about these teams, right? So if you feel like I might want to organize a team, maybe you want to organize one in your office, we'd love to have your brokerage or your company involved, right? So if you'd like to learn more, click that second link. So it says join our info meeting. That's the link. It's going to take you to the informational meeting tomorrow where we can get together and we can talk about how these teams are going to work and whether or not you want to help get one organized. So if you're just thinking, you know, this sounds fun, I want to participate in the challenge, I just don't know if I really want to bother with organizing a team, you know what, just join us on the info session tomorrow. I can talk to you about other ways that you can be involved without having to build your own team, or we can talk about how to get a team organized in your office so that you're not the one that has to run it. Okay, so we'll give you a couple different options. So let me check the chat. Would you mind repeating the video app companies you mentioned? So the two are Big View, and I'm going to actually go ahead and put them in the chat right now, and Vidyard and Big View. Those are the two that I mentioned. There was others I think that were on the slides, but the two that I actually mentioned are those companies in particular. I'm not sure what you mean by a team. Are we all donating for the same fundraiser? So the way it's going to work is that we're the nonprofits that we have participating, and I'm actually just going to bump back to that slide. The teams that sign up, what you're going to do is choose one of these organizations to support. So if you find one here that you're passionate about or that you want to help raise some funds for and some awareness for, you're going to choose that organization, and then everybody on your team is going to make videos to promote that particular organization. All right. So that's going to be how it works. Again, if you want some more information, you want to talk more about the challenge, just go ahead and RSVP for that meeting tomorrow. I'll just do this one last thing. If you cannot make the meeting tomorrow, because I know that might be an issue, it's a little bit last second, and you do still want more information, my email's in the chat. All right. So if you want to just go ahead and email me, we can talk outside of the meeting and we can go from there.
And Nick, real quick, I can add about the team thing too, because I'm going to do it for my team. We've got about 50 loan officers, and really we're going to raise money, but more than anything, part of the reason why I'm doing it. So if you have a team or you're a part of a team, more than anything, part of the reason I'm doing it is to encourage them and get them more comfortable shooting videos and putting it out to on their social media, or putting it out to their databases through BombBomb or email or text, whatever. So there's different ways to think about this. It's doing something wonderful around the holidays, but also from a leader perspective, if you're in a leadership position or you have a team, that's another great reason to do it from a business perspective. Is I just want to try to get people more comfortable shooting videos and practicing.
Yeah, that's a great point. So here's the thing, we do have to wrap up at this point. I put my email in the chat. It's nick@bizvideoschool.com. For anybody else that has any other questions, I'm just going to ask you to email me there. All right. So we do have to hop off. I do want to respect the calendar and the schedule here inside the LabCoatAgents webinars. So we do got to run, but if you do have any questions, you want to ask about any questions whatsoever, all fair game, just take that email, nick@bizvideoschool.com. And I will be happy to talk to you outside of the webinar. All right. So that's all we got for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully I'll see a few of you inside of the challenge, but even if not, get out there, make some videos for your favorite nonprofits, raise some money, and watch as it helps grow your business as well. All right. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next time.